Okay, this is the Consequentialism webcast. Consequentialism is another branch of philosophical ethics, as opposed to deontology, which is another branch of philosophical ethics. These two, as you read through this, and with the deontology article as well, you'll notice that these two are probably the two major branches of philosophical ethics. And they are in many ways responses to each other. A couple of things to remember as you're looking through this, as you're reading through this. The first is that your job is to identify branches of consequentialism, the subsets of consequentialism. You'll see these in italics mostly throughout this article. They are identified with qualifiers and then isms. So you'll see things like hedonistic consequentialism or pluralistic consequentialism. So hedonistic or pluralistic would be the qualifiers, and then the ism obviously is consequentialism, and there are other kinds as well, utilitarianism, etc., etc. So your job really is to find one of these branches and understand what the ethical requirements and permissions are. I hope that makes sense. So more practically, this article is really organized by refutation and defense. This is a standard practice in philosophical writing. Basically, the idea is that these people, these philosophers, want to create a system that is logically impenetrable. And so what they do is, over history, over the hundreds of years, that this idea of consequentialism has been explored. People raise objections, logical objections to any one of these branches, and then they either completely reject those refutations, those objections, or they use part of them to create a new sub-branch. So basically, somebody says, for example, John Stuart Mill says that in classical utilitarianism, the consequences of an act determine its rightness regardless of what it took to create those consequences. In other words, the means justify the ends. Well, then somebody says, well, what is a good consequence? What is utility? You don't define utility. And so then someone else comes along and says, oh, utility is defined by pleasure or pain, and then you get hedonistic consequentialism, which you'll read about in this article. So then, probably most concretely, I just want to go through and tell you what to pay attention to. This first section about classical utilitarianism, I think the most important piece here is this list of claims. This is a list basically of the subsets of consequentialism. So this is a good thing. This is a good way to get started. Although these quick definitions do not fully explore the requirements and permissions of each of these subsets, so it's important still to find the description later in the article. As we go down, what is consequentialism? This is part of the philosophical argument. I think you can skip through this without losing too much for our purposes. So kind of don't ignore section 2, but it's not the most important section. Section 3 talks about the different branches based on definitions of utility, or what is good, what counts as good. So this is a good section to read because it goes through some of the mechanisms for what makes something good. Section 4 goes through and defines subsets based on the consequences. So which consequences of an action are viable for moral judgment? Section 5 is about the nature of the action. So, what is the action that creates a consequence and defines the subsets of consequentialism based on the nature of the action? And then Section 6 is about the demands of consequentialism. One of the, as you'll read, one of the criticisms of this school of philosophy, school of ethics, is that it makes excess demands on an moral agent. So, is it morally wrong to do something if the idea behind consequentialism is that you are obligated to do the things that maximize the good, the maximize net utility? Is it morally wrong to do things that don't maximize net utility? For example, I could volunteer my time, except I choose to watch Netflix. Is that morally wrong? So that's what how Section 6 defines these branches and subsets. And then Section 7 really continues these more philosophical arguments for consequentialism, which isn't that important, again, for our purposes. So please scan it, but don't get bogged down in those arguments because they're not necessarily relevant to this project. Finally, this bibliography is a good place to start. You might want to explore your particular branch with a little more depth, and this is a good place to find articles and books that will give you that depth. Of course, I don't expect you to read a book, but you might be able to find a review of a book or some chapter or something a little more manageable based on this work. Please, as always, if you have any questions, email me. I think this stuff is very interesting and I love to talk about it. Okay, thank you all and enjoy your reading. Bye.